Well, and that's the thing, you would stretch fines as long as you could, you know, and then there were people like New Jack Construction who'd step up and say, I'll take care of that one, and they did.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
it's nice when those kinds of things happen.
It is 8:30.
We are on the air.
We're ready to go.
Okay, let me go ahead and read our preamble. So good morning and welcome to the February 24th, 2022 meetings of the City of Lakeland Historic Preservation Board and Design Review Committee. The board and committee meet monthly to review proposals for changes to properties located within the city's 7 historic districts and buildings designated as local landmarks, as well as to conduct other historic preservation related business consistent with Article 11 of the Land Development Code. The board is made up of 9 Lakeland citizens appointed by the City Commission and is assisted by staff of the Community and Economic Development Department and the City Attorney's Office. The first meeting comprises the Historic Preservation Board agenda, where business of the board is handled. The second meeting consists of the Design Review Committee agenda and involves acting on recommendations from staff regarding certificate of review applications for major work proposed to properties within the historic districts or local landmark buildings. The Design Review Committee is a standing subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Board. Public input is welcomed for items on the Design Review Committee's agenda, and we invite everyone who wishes to participate to be heard. We ask that all speakers come up to the come up to the center podium and state their name and address for the record, and also to be concise in their comments. Thank you for your interest and participation, and please silence all mobile devices at this time. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our board chair, Mr. John White.
Yes, I'd like to call to order the Historic Preservation Board for February 24th, 2022. And we'll start with a roll call. John White, present. Lynn Dennis.
Here?
Landis Fleming.
Here.
Dan Fowler.
Present.
Jeremy Moses.
Here.
Christopher Olson. Cesar Perez.
Here.
Melinda Raker.
Here.
And Michelle Sylvester.
Here.
All right. We do have a quorum, and we'll start then with the review and approval of the January 22nd, 2022 Historic Preservation Board meeting minutes.
Move for approval.
Is there any discussion? And we need a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Under old business, I had asked to be placed on the agenda the request for board support of the Lake Morton Neighborhood Association neighborhood plan. And after discussion with staff, I don't believe we need to endorse it to the City Commission. It kind of puts a board in an awkward situation with the City Commission, but it also puts us in a situation where, should the neighborhood have some issue come up that might be of a different nature than what Preservation Board would normally take a position on, we don't find ourselves in a conflict of interest having endorsed their plan and then having something come up of that nature. The reason for the plan was, specifically reaching out to the city planning and economic development, community development and community and economic development group, but also to the Public Works Department, and they are asking for an endorsement to the City Commission, for which a private society like Historic Lakeland Incorporated can show support for that. We individually, if you would like to, can show support for that. But as a board, I'm not going to ask that we endorse the Lake Morton Neighborhood Plan. I would commend it again to your reading, and on your agenda is the path to get to that. And if you went into the digital agenda, it's just a link, so it's very easy to get to and read what's going on. It was authored by Jim Edwards, local planner and real estate agent, but Jim had written the plan in the 1980s for the neighborhood. many items of which you would find have subsequently been executed, including the downzoning of the neighborhood to allow for less development in certain situations, but also kind of bring a good blanket of single-family residential back to that in-town neighborhood that was one of the first subdivisions of Lakeland. Additionally, though, they're asking for some specific capital improvements, which they would hope the City Commission, by endorsing it, would kind of make a priority. Things like completing sidewalks on at least one side of every street so that you could walk down the street and not have to walk out in the middle of traffic, which was the rule back in the 1920s, but in the 1930s that kind of waned, and people did not put in the sidewalk in front of their house as the house was being built. Down the road, the city may consider reinstituting that kind of thing. Right now, they have a procedure that there's set aside money as you're building for an impact of getting sidewalks built, and that provides funding for the sidewalks that are then promulgated elsewhere. There were things like getting all of the alleys paved. There are still, I think, 3 major sections of the alleys that are not paved, and yet for those of us who either bicycle ride or decide to go on a backdoor visit to somebody, go down those dirt road pieces, and sometimes it's a tripping hazard, sometimes it's a bicycle hazard to not have a paved alley. And the whole idea of alleys, of course, was for service to the residences, but also where the carriage houses were actually oriented, so that you would park your vehicle, your carriage in that day and age, at the back of your property instead of out off of the street. So those kinds of things are in that plan. It does talk about downzoning certain portions of the neighborhood that are owned by people that have a vested interest in the fact that it's zoned multifamily. Florida Southern College owns a number of properties within the neighborhood, and certainly well within their rights to ask that their particular parcels not be downzoned, because they want to be able to house students in that neighborhood. So those kinds of things are in there, and certainly worthy of discussion, and would happen at the Community and Economic Development Department. So with the adoption of planning legalities by that group and by the city itself, those kinds of things will be taken care of. So enough said on that subject, unless someone has some questions. Yes.
The responses were pretty consistent. How many total people gave a response? And how many residents are in that neighborhood?
There are, I know, at least 750 bungalows in that neighborhood, because Jim Edwards also had helped us originally nominate the Lake Morton Neighborhood Association, or nominate the Lake Morton neighborhood to the National Register of Historic Places. So I know there's at least that many. I think there's well over 1,000 residences in the area. Responses are probably only knee-jerk reaction kinds of things. We had a speaker at my Kiwanis Club this morning, or Citrus Center Kiwanis Club, I was visiting today, that was talking about sometimes it's good to have negative responses, because then that helps you improve what you're doing. And certainly positive responses are good as well. So we hope to have those kinds of things happen, and they would be more directed towards the Lake Morton neighborhood, a board on which I also serve. So I would, if we were going to put this thing to a vote, would have to declare not necessarily a conflict of interest, but an interest anyway in what the neighborhood is trying to do.
But you had about 10% of the population then.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, it shows 106, 102, 104 responses. About 107 responses on where it shows inside on the thing, on different things, from 90 something to 83 up to 109 is what I'm seeing on responses to different questions.
So are there any other questions or comments about the Lake Morton Neighborhood Plan? Well, thank you. we will temporarily suspend our action right now and move to design review committee and come back to take up the new business items, if you will.
Very well. I'll call to order the meeting of the February 24th, 2022 meeting of the Design Review Committee and take roll call. Lynn Dennis here, John White,
Present?
Dan Fowler,
Here.
Landis Fleming.
Did you say that? Oh,
That will be you. Landis Fleming.
there was a big blob between you and me. Huh?
I know. It's that chair, I think, Landis. Jeremy Moses.
Here.
Chris Olson. Melinda Rinker. Here. Very well, we have a quorum. Hopefully you've had time to review the minutes from the January 27th, 2022 meeting. Are there any corrections?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Between January 22nd and February 14th, there were 21 certificates of review that were administratively approved. Does anyone have questions about any of those? Hearing none, we will move to the public hearing portion of the meeting to consider our one certificate of review application. And I would ask if City Attorney Jared Simpson would please swear in.
Are you presenting today? Oh. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Very good, thank you very much. Our first and only certificate for review is HPB 22-023, 1028 to 1032 South Florida Avenue. Final approval is requested for the renovation of the primary facade of the building on the subject property, as well as minor alterations to the rear facade and parking lot. Owner applicant, Mr. Gregory Sonoba, Dixieland North LLC and Dixieland South LLC. Emily, would you please introduce the request?
Oh, Madam Chair,
Oh.
can we ask for conflicts of?
I'm sorry, conflicts of interest. Any conflicts among the committee members? Thank you.
Thanks.
I forget the legal part there. And now Emily.
Thank you. So the subject property is located on the east side of South Florida Avenue within the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor and consists of one parcel that is 0.32 acres in area. The building on the subject property, built circa 1949, is a one-story masonry vernacular commercial building with a flat parapet roof and flat awning. 6 bays or storefronts are featured on the building, 3 of which are occupied by individual businesses and 3 of which are mostly enclosed with vertical wood siding. The building is non-contributing within the Dixieland Historic District. So the applicant has received a Dixieland CRA Design Assistance Grant for this project and will be applying for a CRA Facade Improvement Grant, which requires the Design Review Committee's review and approval of the project. The proposal seeks to renovate the painted masonry facade with a new stucco and faux brick facade. The enclosed storefronts will be reopened and new glass and aluminum storefront windows and doors will be installed throughout the building. The flat roof parapet wall will be given a curvilinear appearance for each storefront space, and a new flat awning running the length of the facade will be installed. Design features of the facade renovation include contrasting coping along the curved parapet, gooseneck and sconce light fixtures, signboards and new hanging signs, and recessed areas covered in faux brick above the awning, which will allow the roof venting to sort of blend into the facade. The new materials for this request will consist of aluminum doors and storefront windows, stucco and stucco brick. The applicant also proposes to replace the exterior doors on the rear facade not visible from South Florida Avenue, as well as to level the existing parking lot behind the building. And both of these items are able to be administratively reviewed and approved by staff. Any new signage will require a sign permit for each sign, which is also able to be reviewed administratively. So the request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. The proposed alterations to the subject building are consistent with the standards, as the changes will not destroy historic materials or adversely affect the character or spatial relationships of historic buildings within the Dixieland Historic District or the CRA Commercial Corridor. The proposal complies with the design guidelines as it introduces a sensitively updated storefront appearance that continues to be pedestrian scaled towards the South Florida Avenue corridor. The conversion of a flat to curved parapet roofline provides visual interest and relates to each of the 6 storefront bays. Fenestration is consistent and appropriate in scale to what currently exists and reflects materials that are seen in the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor, as well as traditional commercial building design. The introduction of stucco and stucco brick on the building facade is an appropriate treatment for this masonry vernacular building and is consistent with the design guidelines. However, a smooth texture stucco finish should be used for compatibility with the existing exterior. As rear and sidewall elevation drawings were not submitted for review, details concerning these elevations should be reviewed by staff for consistency with the other elevations prior to permitting. And finally, any signage for this building must meet applicable sign design guidelines for the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor and also complete a sign permit application review.
Very good.
So as this request is consistent with the standards and design guidelines, staff recommends approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. Number 1, use a smooth texture stucco on all walls receiving new stucco finish. And 2, use transparent glass on all windows and doors as dark or mirrored tinting is not permitted. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add?
Morning. Thank you all for considering this request today. My name is Greg Sanova. I don't have anything to add. I think a picture is probably worth 1,000 words, and there's no sense in me talking for 5 minutes. Just look at the picture. It's quite an improvement. This property historically has been owned by 2 separate owners. The south property was owned by a doctor. The last real renovation to that property was probably sometime in the 70s. The inside of the building looks like it hasn't really been modified or renovated since the 70s as well. So it's going to be quite a change for that area, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. We have no public to ask questions, so not having public questions. Any questions from the committee members?
Can I ask a question about the storefronts? Will it pretty much match the storefronts that are in the north building?
Yes.
In the south building? Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same material. The material that's on the north part is a wood frame, whereas on the southern portion, it's going to be an aluminum frame. But we're going to try to make it match as closely as possible so that we have a nice, consistent look for the whole building.
Okay. And is this the color scheme on that we've seen on? Okay.
Isn't the suggestion of number 2, use transparent glass, isn't that a contradiction to a west-facing?
Well, I was going to talk to that when we got to the part where we're discussing.
okay.
That doesn't really affect the owner, but
Right.
yeah, you are correct.
Well, I think it, in a way it does. I mean, it's a suggested condition, so I was going to ask if you had any objection to the suggested conditions that, if Emily, if you can put them on the screen so he can, do you have any objection to those?
I don't.
So yeah, I think it's, to bring it up, it's now, Dan.
We could, well, yeah. What, you want to continue with it, or item number 2 is actually the window film policy in our guidelines talk about control that, and they allow slightly tinted glass and that sort of thing. It outlines the visible light transmittance requirements, shading coefficients, and all that. Because definitely on west-facing glass, first of all, with transparent, you're not going to meet the Florida Energy Code in all likelihood. So you need some sort of energy stopping glass, if you will, or efficiency. So, and our guidelines are very good and speak to those requirements. So if anything, we might want to either just simply remove item 2 because it is covered, or we could say, you know,
Change it to e-glass.
be sure to review land development code glass requirements.
Right.
Just to
That
make
would
sure.
make better sense.
And I think having something slightly, addressing that with a light tint and so forth helps, and it may also prevent tenants from just putting window blinds down there, which is definitely we don't want. So,
I do know, for instance, in the northernmost one of those, because I go there regularly, she put the tinted shades in hers. And so there are ways that they can control the light more than just that.
because the intent of item 2 is correct.
Yes.
But in any event.
I wondered that same thing when I read it because of that east facing there.
Right, yeah, and I apologize, I should have
That's all right.
reworded that condition, that the tinting is allowed per
Yeah.
our design
You're
guidelines.
used to that over the years.
Right.
Well, I will say too, it really only affects 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. It's not the entire afternoon, because you have a 2-story building across the street that's giving shade to that building.
And there's the awning, which
Right,
provides some-
yes, provides some shade until about 2 in the afternoon. So it's only between like 2 and 5 that you have issues.
But the building code still be in effect.
We'll address it, yeah.
Would you say to still not allow mirrored tinting, because that's the same as
Yeah,
putting a shade?
yeah, I think you just say, use glass as approved by code or something.
Yeah, because the code clearly, our code does not allow mirrored
Mirrored,
Or
Right.
dark glass,
Okay.
right,
Yeah. And you don't need that to meet the energy code, so.
right. There's a thing called e-glass that is a little greener than regular
yeah.
glass, and it's made for that kind of an application. Or there's different kinds of glasses that have other things.
Okay. Any other
Well,
questions?
when it comes time for renovation, actually, if you could ask Lons to look into each of those, they appear to be 2 vents on each unit, if they could find another example to get rid of those.
Vents?
I don't know.
Yeah, the
Might
vents
be-
coming forward,
Existing
it makes it almost look like they're lights because of the lights up above,
I know,
but
but-
they're really vents.
I'm thinking they're attic vents or something, I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, those
they're
little
existing
little
on the-
goosenecks that stick
They
out.
currently exist on the
Yeah.
building.
Yes, they're currently there, so they serve a purpose, I presume.
Yeah, they do vent the-
Honestly,
they
I'm
vent the
kind of
attic.
with John, they look like lights in this picture.
Well, only because
Yeah.
the lights up
Yeah,
above
I
are really
gotcha.
lighting way down there as well.
Sure.
Yeah,
Other than that, it's a great addition, great.
great solution.
Like, wow.
Are we ready?
Can you move by the building to the south and do the same?
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Whole side
Sure you
is so
did.
ugly compared to across the street.
Yeah.
And you were on air. I couldn't get to your mute button.
I actually went on Google Street View and I was trying to figure out exactly where this is and I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is a
Vast improvement.
Yes, vast improvement. Now you said somebody asked about the north building and the south building being a little bit different. What was?
Well,
Ownership and the fact they'd closed up the.
Historically, the
Yeah,
single
so-
structure, it's a 7,000 square foot structure, and historically, the north side was owned by one owner and the south side was owned by a different owner. And so because of that, they have different, if you look at the picture of the way it is
colors.
now,
Different colors and they.
different
closed
colors,
those
it's just, they were maintained completely differently, even though they shared a roof.
But
And they share a
now they're all going to be the same. Is that what?
It's under
Single
2
ownership.
separate owners right now,
Oh,
but
okay.
I am both.
Oh, okay. So the final is all going to be the same. Is that what I heard, or is it going to be a little bit different?
The final what?
The final look. I mean
Yeah.
that appears to be all the same all the way down.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a slightly different look between the north and the south because I'm not replacing all of the windows and all of the doors on the north 3 units.
Right.
The south 3 units are currently just boarded up.
Yeah.
So we'll put inserts, the windows and door inserts into those, which are going to be aluminum and glass.
Yeah,
Okay.
aluminum frame.
Missed that T1.
Yeah, it's hard to see, with the way that angle is, it's hard to see that there's going to be a difference there.
Yeah, it will be different, not major, but it will be slightly different.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll thank you very much, and we'll close the public portion of this review and ask for discussion among committee members.
Do you want a motion before the discussion or after?
Well, usually discuss before the motion, that's how it's laid out, a time for discussion and to ask questions of Mr. Sonoba if you have additional questions, but if we've done that already.
I've got all my stuff answered.
Okay. Got all our stuff taken
Yep.
care of? Okay.
I know, right?
Okay, then do I hear a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move approval in accord with staff recommendations with the caveat that glass be approached as is set out in the historic district guidelines, and the word transparent be taken out completely and substituted with something like energy efficient glass in all windows and doors.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, we'll go take a roll call. Lynn Dennis for the motion, John White,
For the motion?
Dan Fowler,
For the motion?
Landis Fleming,
4.
Jeremy Moses,
For.
Chris Olson,
Or.
Melinda Rinker.
4.
And you are approved.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to read into the fact that Chris Olson is here?
Chris Olson has joined the meeting and been counted present at both the Design Review Committee and the Historic Preservation Board. So, any further business to come before the Design Review Committee? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
We will reconvene then the meeting of the Historic Preservation Board under new business. Just by way of announcement, the Lake Morton neighborhood is resuming their in-person home and garden tour. This year scheduled for the first weekend in April. They moved it back because of issues like the Omicron variant and those kinds of things to get preparation. I believe they have 8 homes on the tour this year.
Actually, they just added another one, so
So
9.
9 homes on the tour this year. Emily is in support of, and I would commend to one of the members here on the board if you would like to assist with that. Helps each year with the research for the homes and stuff. So it's kind of in support of that neighborhood tour that we work with them. I sit on that board. I think Emily sits on that board. So we wear a couple of different hats, but it's interesting, and we're just by way of announcement promoting that activity. You would go to their website though to find out about getting tickets and that kind of stuff. Second item under new business is Historic Lakeland's planning update for 2022. And unfortunately, I've got a conflict of interest on this one as well because I sit as chair of that organization. But I had laid out for Historic Lakeland, and this is just by way of announcement again, kind of 5 goals I really wanted us to concentrate on. And excuse me. You will notice that some of them are really in support of activities that we would undertake with the help of Emily and the other staff in community and economic development, and in terms of moving forward with looking at districts that are already approved and need additional legwork to talk about the contributing and non-contributing buildings, bringing those master site files up to date. But secondly, Historic Lakeland was responsible in the past for having stepped forward and done all of the legwork in advance of like the first couple of residential districts in the Lakeland area, doing the legwork for filling out master site file forms, and might be able to provide that support again by way of volunteers to the community and economic development. But what I had asked the Historic Lakeland Board to look at was, of course, engaging younger members of Historic Lakeland. Their board suffers from the situation where a lot of us have graying hair and have been sitting on that board forever, and we really need to engage younger people within that organization, and are making an all-out effort to do that. We've revised our website. There's other kinds of social media that we're working our way onto, and looking at making a real footprint in looking at, just recognizing the history of things in Lakeland. It's not necessarily nominating everything to the National Register of Historic Places, or even getting outside of Lakeland, because we had come up with, I think early on, 5 local landmarks that we endorsed, and ultimately the Preservation Board provided a landmark status to, one of which was in fact City Hall. At the same time that it was already in the Munn Park Historic District, but City Hall was recognized as a landmark of Lakeland. The old Oates building that is on Florida Avenue was one of those. There was a Munn house on Drain Park in the Dixieland Historic District. Not Abraham Godwin Munn, but one of the other members of the family had a home there, and it was nominated as a landmark. But it's interesting that those things are landmarks, not because they are in and of themselves, beautiful pieces of architecture, but the fact that you recognize you're in downtown because the Oates building is there, the first, 4-story building as you're coming into downtown. And so it's interesting to notice those things. They really are landmarks. And one of the early on things Historic Lakeland did was adopt that kind of out of a quote from out of Proverbs about remove not the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. So, in that case, it was really talking about surveying, but but we took that as our motto early on to kind of help engage the community in why you recognize those things. We wanted to have an emphasis on planning for surveys. There's a kind of a 3-year relook that the Preservation Board is working with the Community and Economic Development on resurveying the existing 6 districts plus Florida Southern College as a 7th district within the city, and looking at, contributing and non-contributing buildings, getting those master site files updated so that we really are looking at the proper information when we come and consider these things as a part of our agenda here. But also having them kind of lead the effort to look at Northwest Lakeland, help memorialize the information that was gathered this year, particularly all during the month of February, which is dealing with minority histories in the Lakeland area, and recognizing that and getting that, memorialized at the Lakeland Room in the Lakeland Public Library. So we'll be working with that staff to look at Northwest Lakeland. We probably want to do some early legwork and identify things in the Camphor Heights area in terms of mid-century modern architecture. All that area is now 60 and 70 years old, and certainly worthy of a look-see, even if it's not contributing, but to kind of get a feel for, is it enough to say we have a collectible district there? Same might be said of Westlake Hollingsworth. There was a political reason perhaps in the past for why we couldn't do that. There might be a reason now why we want to do that, because of just the knowledge of the historic homes there that probably ought to have at least some recognition, but not necessarily preventing new construction in the area, the same as we deal with kind of like the Munn Park Historic District. We welcome new development, but you might want to look at that in terms of Westlake Hollingsworth as well, and certainly north, at least the north part of Cleveland Heights, but we may want to look at the whole Cleveland Heights area, all the way down to almost the YMCA, and back towards the what is the what is, I don't know the new name for the Lakeland Yacht Club. It's called something
Just a
different.
country club.
Yeah, Lakeland Country Club now. But that whole area of Cleveland Heights from Buckingham all the way over to really almost Florida Avenue is considered Cleveland Heights. And there are some developments in that neighborhood that aren't historically correct to what was there originally, but certainly worth looking at. Then moving on down, completing the work on the history of Lakeland coloring book that we had prepared for the fourth grade students. This was undertaken by Dave Pender, who was an architect here locally who had started doing that. And really it might be as simple as taking those diagrams of buildings that were done for the ornaments that Historic Lakeland put out over the years, and taking those line drawings of those buildings and just putting them together in a book and providing it to the fourth grade teachers, where the students are beginning to learn about the history of Florida. And certainly we want them to know about the history of Lakeland as well, and so put that out into the schools. We are working to reestablish our quarterly newsletter and hope to at least have a 2-page edition come out right here at the 1st of March. So I've already prepared the report from last year for this committee to go into that newsletter, and Historic Lakeland writes one that goes into that newsletter. And then there's just information about activities of things that are happening within the area, particularly related to historic preservation. Emily helps host every other year, I guess, a workshop, and that won't come up until 2023 this year, but just an early notice maybe to people that thing is coming, and certainly then it becomes more important next year that we get the announcement out there that there are workshops about how to restore things properly. And then ideas for other membership events other than the annual meeting. One of the things I had suggested was maybe we as a group go out and all take the tour of Florida Southern College together, or we all take the tour, work with the gentleman who used to give the tours of Lake Mirror to go back and help us have a tour of Lake Mirror and the history around that development in downtown. Historic Lakeland has been very good about sponsoring on an irregular basis because of the intervening 2 years we've had here of pandemic, but walkabouts in downtown and showing a historic walking tour of what happens downtown. And this year, Jim Studial, the former director of community development, is going to be leading that tour for us on, I believe it's the 23rd of April.
April, yeah.
April 23rd this year. I would normally be joining him, but I have a memorial service to go to for a brother-in-law who died during the COVID epidemic, and so I'll be down in Sarasota that day. But Jim Edwards and Jim Studial will be leading that tour, and so if you guys would like to sign up early, get to the LDDA website. They help co-sponsor that, and there's an opportunity for you to join that walking tour of downtown.
And we'd also welcome any volunteers that would like to be tour guides.
In the future, yes. We lost one of our real joys was Jim Molest always brought some real beautiful color to those tours, because he gave the announcement at the beginning of the tour that we're going to tell you some things that are absolute facts. We're going to tell you some things that we think are true. And then we'll probably tell you some bold-faced lies, and it's up to you to discern the difference between the three. But Jim Molest was very good. Even acting as a state commissioner, he was giving those kinds of announcements for us. So it was just kind of fun to have that at the beginning of your walking tour of downtown. But we hope to feature, when we're doing the south tour of downtown, going to the top of the Lake Mirror Tower and being able to see all the vistas around and look out towards the Bach Tower one direction, or towards the Strawberry the other direction, and over in Plant City, and then talk about the development as Lakeland grew. So that's just kind of fun. But there are other opportunities for other kinds of activities that you'll be hearing about as the year comes on. And our awards ceremony will probably be in early May. It normally corresponds with Preservation Week, which is on one side or the other each year of Mayfair by the Lake. So our event this year will be hosted at the Polk Theater. We haven't exactly determined the date, but it'll be like the second or third Monday in April, probably. or in May, excuse me, 2nd and 3rd. So look for announcements on that. Will probably come out in the newsletter. Are there any questions about any of that, just planning update? No?
And you might want to announce our Historic Lakeland, the new board members that also serve on the Preservation Board.
Oh, yes. Cesar Perez has joined that board and serves with us on Historic Lakeland. I'm not sure that anyone else has joined that board yet.
Michelle, didn't you?
Michelle has asked to be
Yeah.
recused.
Almost every Monday, and my
Okay.
husband has some major health problems, and so we've been going back and forth between Lakeland and Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi.
Well,
So-
so Michelle has recused. Are there any other items to come before the board then? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.